my goal with this podcast was not only to have fun, but to tell everybody about Jesus, because I really, really, really want to make heaven crowded. And if I can just be this much a part of that, then that is my life mission. But on top of that, I just really love hearing other people's stories. And so you start to kind of become a collector of different people's perspectives and experiences. That has been my life for the last decade and a half. And so I really want to tell people's stories. And when appropriate, I hope that we can bring the gospel of Jesus Christ into it. Hi, I'm Kristen Bruinius, and this is the Overcomers Podcast. I'm so excited for you to hear the stories of incredible people overcoming trials and turning them into triumphs. From everyday moms and dads to entrepreneurs to community leaders and beyond, you'll see how everyone has a story of overcoming, and those stories are what connect us all. Let's hop right in. Hey, welcome to the Overcomers Podcast. It has been a minute. Whew, it is 2026. By the time you hear this recording, it'll be March of 2026. This is the longest break that I have taken in this chapter of my life of being a podcaster, I guess. And we'll go into that a little bit, but if you're here, I really genuinely want to say thank you for coming back after I took such a long break, and just thank you for being here. Do me a favor. We are on all kinds of social media platforms. We're on Instagram, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever. Wherever you are listening to this or wherever you see this, just do me a favor and hit follow or like or, whatever all the buttons are. Just hit all the buttons, and that will help to spread the word, especially as we get into the recording season again. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that this has been the most fun project that the Lord has ever laid on my heart, but also one of the most difficult. I'm not even telling you guys how much I had to kick and scream and pray and fight going back into the season again. I mean, I would ask questions like, Lord, was this just meant to be a chapter? Was this meant to get me through the mental health crisis that I had in 2022? Was this meant to, just be something I did for fun? Is this closing? And he said no. And then I just I'm having a really hard time getting this season up, where different circumstances are happening. Actually, right now in this time slot, I'm supposed to be recording with someone else. And she ended up just very, very sick and just couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, is this, with all these guests having to reschedule or getting sick or, things happen, is that a sign that you don't want me to do this anymore? And he was like, no. And then last night I was thinking to myself, well, I have this spot. My husband lets me do this in his office, and he knows that I'm coming. Maybe I should make use of this. So here I am. I figured, all right, Lord, we're still gonna stay faithful. We're still gonna kick off the podcast on this day, and I'm still gonna record, but instead of having a guest, I'm going to record by myself. And I want to tell you that I get so much joy out of recording this podcast, but it is so hard. It is so much work. It is such a challenge. It is genuinely the hardest. No, being a mom is the hardest thing ever, and the most joyful thing. It's similar to being a mom. I guess that would probably be like a really good analogy, is that this podcast is like being a mother, where it is in the same sentence, the most joyful, life-giving thing that you are excited about, but also like so challenging. I don't want to do it 95% of the time as I'm driving here to interview a guest. No offense, guests, because I do end up loving all of you. I don't want to interview them. I think I suck. It's a spiritual warfare thing. I don't like the sound of my voice. I sometimes misspeak. Yeah, it's really, really hard. And the hardest ones are episodes like this, where I really like telling other people's stories. I don't necessarily so much like telling mine or doing a solo episode. And my husband's been so encouraging to me when I do these episodes. And I always tell him, like, you have to like the things I say because you're married to me. But he has encouraged me to say, I do really enjoy when you just get on and talk. So from time to time, I do episodes like this. I can't remember if I did any in 2025 at all, but regardless, I really like telling other people's stories. Don't as much like just hearing myself talk, which for those of you who follow me on social media, I think that might surprise you a little bit, because I do have a very strong social media presence, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. But even when I have the most amazing partner in crime who helps me with some of like the social media stuff, and when we started working together, she was like, just dump all the pictures you have of yourself on your phone and send them over to me. And I was like, I did. So I think people would find it surprising that I don't really live an influencer type life. I really have to push myself to take photos of myself. I really, I could spend an entire day with my friends and never take a single picture. I think as I get older, I actually do less and less of that. And those of you who are kind of at the same stage of parenting as I am, I don't feel the need to document as much as I used to. I'm finding myself more living in the moments. The only thing I think I probably do pretty well is I do a lot of video, but videos are easy because I could just set up the phone and then whatever happens, and then I just chop it up and I put it out there. I get very self-critical of like selfies and pictures of me and stuff like that. So I actually really don't. Even though I think sometimes the I'm Kristen Bruinius or even this podcast looks as if sometimes I enjoy being on the internet all the time. I think there was a time in my life I enjoyed it more, but yeah, I really like putting the highlight on other people. And so that's what this podcast is all about. So anyway, at the end of last season, I really challenged myself with this podcast to go all the way from the start of 2025. And I wanted to see what it would look like if I went pretty much an entire calendar year, start to finish. And that was cool. I met a lot of really amazing people that impacted my life. Some people who became friends, I believe, could become lifetime friends because we talk all the time. I also discovered this really big word that starts with the letter B called burnout. And so Jenna did come on at the end of last season when I was so incredibly burnt out. If I listened to some of those last episodes, I could tell I'm kind of slurring my speech a little bit. Maybe you guys can't tell, but I can tell. And so that was part of the reason why I took this time off. And so here we are again. This episode's going to come out, like I said, in March. And my goal this year is to just bring back the fun. And I never went into this podcast. It definitely doesn't make any money. So if you're wondering that, no, it does not make any money. It actually costs money. My goal with this podcast was not only to have fun, but to tell everybody about Jesus, because I really, really, really want to make heaven crowded. And if I can just be this much a part of that, then that is my life mission. But on top of that, I just really love hearing other people's stories. In all of the years that I've been in network marketing, one of the cool things about network marketing is you end up kind of becoming like a collector of people's stories, either of like their transformations or of like you get to meet people from all over the United States, become really good friends with them. Some of my best friends that I talk to every day live in South Dakota and Idaho and, Utah and Texas and all of these places. And so you start to kind of become a collector of different people's perspectives and experiences. And that's just the United States. And then you start to meet people from all over the world. And that has been my life for the last decade and a half. And so I really want to tell people's stories. And when appropriate, I hope that we can bring the gospel of Jesus Christ into it. And of course, not every guest is a Christian. Not every guest's story is biblically based, but those who are, I consider it to be a privilege. So speaking of business, that was a big part of the burnout and the need to just step back. I had a bit of an identity crisis, actually, that I really needed to figure out. So I do mention it quite often on this podcast, so it's not a surprise to anyone, but I am a network marketer. I started network marketing with my original business in, I'm trying to remember, 2012. And did that until 2017, and then pivoted to more like supplements, herbal supplements, that sort of thing. And so I've been doing it since then. And as I fell into a bit of a health crisis myself with some of like the perimenopause stuff and some of the mental health stuff, I got really, really interested in hormones, hormone balance, hormone replacement therapy. You can tell I had 3 guests on that we specifically talked about hormones. And I thought that that was the direction the Lord was calling me, was to be kind of a spokesperson for women's health, to say the things that people are afraid to say, because apparently I like to do that. After about 4 or 5 months of doing that, I was like, I don't want to do that anymore, Lord. And so I completely pivoted. And part of the reason I didn't want to do it anymore was because I don't ever want to be anyone's doctor. And I, in the midst of that, had a few experiences that really led me to pivot my business. And that was another reason why I really needed to step back from this podcast, was I really needed to figure out, who do I want to help? How do I want to help them? And how can I help them in a way that feels authentic to me, that doesn't lead to double burnout, because I don't want to be burned out on the podcast and also burned out in my business life. And there were really 3 experiences that led to that. The first one was, and they're all related to feeling shamed by the holistic world. And so I ended up coming out of that realizing that I really wanted to speak for the people who have had experiences like I had, where people looked down on them or made judgments of them or made them feel less than because they weren't 100% crunchy. And as the world, with the whole MAHA movement and the things that RFK is doing and various other health people, I think just an awareness that as we become more and more natural minded, that people are becoming more and more educated about things like gluten and artificial sweeteners and food dyes and glyphosate and all of those things, that we be careful not to shame people for their health decisions, because I had that happen 3 different times that really led to a pivotal change for me actually in my business. And so now my business is meeting moms in the middle of crunchy and convenient, because that's really where I'm at. I always start with more of the crunchy sort of thing. Like, what can I do for this stomach ache, headache, mental health issue, trouble focusing, that is more holistic. But then if the holistic isn't working, okay, let's look at some of these other options. And so the first instance of this happening was during that health crisis, which I've done previous episodes on. I go back and find them. I think one of them was the year 41 broke me, I think was what it was called. I now can look back at that and be like, I think that was the beginning of perimenopause, on top of spiritual warfare and all kinds of other stuff that was going on. But in the midst of that, I not only was falling apart mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I was also having physical symptoms that I don't think I focused so much on that particular episode. And some of the physical symptoms were that I just could not stop gaining weight. And once the number on the scale went from 1 to 2, I realized I had a problem. And yes, I'm almost 6 foot tall, so I am a taller girl, but that was a number that I hadn't even seen when I was pregnant. And my face was puffy. I felt terrible. My thyroid was, I can see in some of the previous episodes, like my thyroid was bulging. My face was much more inflamed. I started down the path that most people do, where I was watching what I was eating. I was trying to work out. A friend of mine introduced me to a blood sugar monitor. And so I purchased a blood sugar monitor just out of pocket because insurance wouldn't cover it because I'm not diabetic. And I found out, okay, I do have blood sugar issues. I am very insulin resistant. So even though I'm not diabetic, my blood sugar was going like this within those norms. And so, I was pushing pre-diabetic. I was very overweight. And I was doing all the things, trying all the things, and nothing seemed to, like, the dam wasn't breaking. I wasn't losing any weight. I was actually just continuing to put on weight. And so, I go to a functional doctor, and the functional doctor was like, I think you need to consider microdosing with the GLP-1. Now, mind you, this was a year and a half ago. Now GLP-1s are far more accepted. The research is out there that they are not the devil that they were made to be. But at this point, so I'm trying to think, this was August of 2024, I think. At this point, microdosing was a very new concept. And microdosing just means like as small as possible. There are some doctors who think of microdosing as actually microscopic amounts. Microdosing in this particular practitioner's view is like, we're going to start at like the smallest possible dose and just go up little incremental amounts. And I don't want to speak too much about dosing because I am not a doctor, and I'm going to put that caveat out there because Lord knows I don't want to get sued. But the idea was to just give your body a little bit of help. Changed my life. It was phenomenal. It was exactly what my body needed. But the amount of shame that I felt for making that decision kept me up at night, because here I am, kind of holistic Kristen on the internet, and I'm watching all of these Facebook, Instagram posts talk about, people are taking the easy way out, and you're going to end up with frozen stomach, and you're going to end up with tumors, and as soon as you go off all this stuff, you're going to gain all the weight back, and that it's poison because it was discovered from some kind of lizard, I believe. And so there's all this like shame put on people like me who, like, I had tried all the things, I had done the natural stuff. I had done the exercise. I had gone through this like mental breakdown. And so I went on it, and I was sick for exactly one day. So like no side effects whatsoever. It was literally the only time I ever really had any side effects that weren't positive side effects, because I'll talk to you about some of the positive side effects I had. Was the very first day I took it, and one of my dear friends happened to stop by the house, and she was like, Kristen, you are green. And she was one of the few people that I did tell that I had decided to do this. And there's some people, because they've spoken so loudly about their judgment, they're probably going to listen to this podcast. It's going to be the first time they're going to hear it, and that's fine. But anyway, I had told her, and she was like, you're literally green. And I was like, I know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Felt fine the next morning. But some of those positive side effects that I noticed was, I initially lost 15 pounds. Like, that was like pretty quickly. And I think most of it was inflammation. But I started to notice different things. Like, I didn't have any interest in alcohol. I've never really had an issue with alcohol, but I just completely really kind of just like even lost the desire for it, which was good for me because I have a history of being a smoker, and smoking and alcohol, that's like your combo, right? I started to notice that like my mood was more elevated, that I was just generally happier, that I had more energy. Trying to think what else, just like my outlook in life got better, probably also partly because I was also losing the weight. So anyway, I tell you all of that was my first instance where I kind of looked around and I was like, I feel like there should be a place for people like me who want to try all of the holistic things, but you hit a point where you're like, I need to do something because I'm on the way to diabetes and I'm on the way to basically obesity, and I can't seem to stop this spiral. And I want to do this in an appropriate, slow way, which is what I did. And I also want to take all these supplements and have a healthy lifestyle and try to eat organic as much as possible. But I also want to drink a Coca-Cola from time to time. Like, there's got to be a place for me. And so that was the first instance. And now I will also tell you that I'm still microdosing. And like I said, I think it's been a year and a half. I took the entire summer off. Just because I was like, I'm going to do a little experiment and I'm going to see if I gain all the weight that I lost. I also just didn't want to have to go to the doctor over the summer. And then I started again in the fall, and I've lost some more weight very slowly, very maintained, no side effects. And it's been wonderful. And look into the benefits of GLP-1s and perimenopause and menopause. That's your homework for you guys. I really think it helps a lot of people. So anyway, that was situation number one, where I was like, there's so much shame and guilt, and I will also say this, entire businesses being built on shame and guilt of people who made this health decision was also a big thing that I would see on the internet. And I would sit there and be like, well, I don't really think I'm a bad person. Number two was, in the midst of all of this, as I'm losing the weight and getting my life back on track, there was still just like a few things that felt off. And I went back to that doctor and I said, overall, I'm feeling really good, like feeling really, really clear-minded and transformed, but there's a few things that are still a little bit off. She ran my blood work and she was like, that's because you have no progesterone. Welcome to perimenopause. And I mean, my progesterone levels were so incredibly low. And if you're a guy, this probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you until you have a wife that's 35, 40, 41, 42 when this happens to her. When you don't have progesterone, that's when all of the symptoms that I was having start to happen, like the panic, the unexplained anxieties and fears, because progesterone's like your calm hormone. That's like the zen. And I didn't have any zen, like hormonally. And whenever your hormones are imbalanced, that's also when you experience a lot of health issues. Could be things like weight gain as well. So there was my second instance where I'd been taking supplements for hormone balance, and they were great. And I think that they had helped me maintain until this point. But as I said, always start with the more natural. But then if it comes a time when your body needs some help, that's why God made these things too. And here's the thing, progesterone is made from wild yams. So technically it is a supplement. It's a plant-based supplement, but it's broken down to mimic the hormones, but its source is a wild yam. So anyway, I go on progesterone. Once again, I'm like, wow, my life is so much fuller with this. I fell asleep on the couch the very first time I took it. Started sleeping better. Didn't even realize I wasn't sleeping well. Feel so much calmer. My reaction is so much slower. Not that this is the only thing I'm doing. Of course, I'm still going to see a therapist. I'm still getting in the Word every day. I'm still taking my supplements. I'm still walking outside as much as I can. I'm still got really good friends and husband and kids, and like have a great support system. So I'm not by any means saying that this was like a one and done thing. But then there came the shame and the guilt from the holistic community, and not in particular Soul Naturals people, because they're my family and they're amazing. But I'm just talking from like the Instagram world or the TikTok world. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, just get off of those things. Okay, we could, but at the same time, if I'm seeing it, so are other people. And so I felt like, oh, here's another area I need to be ashamed. Not only am I microdosing with the GLP-1, now I'm also supplementing with progesterone and a tiny bit of testosterone. And so I should feel shame and guilt because I should be able to just take a supplement for this. And because I'm not full crunchy, I have to hide this and be ashamed of this. And then the third instance came when there was a conversation had behind my back about where I was in my health journey. And this may not seem like a really big deal to you guys, but they basically jokingly said, oh, well, if Kristen didn't do things like drink a Coke, drink lattes from Starbucks, if she would clean up X, Y, and Z, she would be so much farther ahead of where she was right now. And it was kind of like that icing on the cake moment where I was like, first of all, how dare you make those judgment calls on me? Second of all, you have no idea the pits of despair that I just came out of with a mental health crisis, figuring out perimenopause, no progesterone, had gained all this weight, like all this stuff. And so my Coca-Cola that I have, that's like the thing that I'm going to cling to that makes me happy every day. And I'm going to continue to drink that. And it was that final nail in the coffin that I said, I need to make a change. I need to start speaking for people like me who are in the middle, who that Coca-Cola brings them a joy, or that Starbucks latte, that's their favorite thing that they do for themselves. Or, you know what? I'm going to try to put great homemade meals on the table 4 days a week, but on Fridays I'm going to get Chick-fil-A or whatever. And I didn't see anybody else saying you don't have to feel guilty if you do that you're okay, you're good enough. And so it was a very personal thing that I wanted to come forward and speak for those people who felt like me, that I felt like I was almost like less than because I was making these decisions. So I did make the business change. In the midst of this, I participated in the most amazing 12-week mastermind class. There was 10 women who were picked through like an application process from all over the world. A couple of them are going to be coming on the podcast. You'll get to meet Jo, who's originally from England, now living in Barcelona. Her handle is Speak English with Jo. She is like the sweetest thing ever, and she has this cute little British accent. But I got to work with people from all over the world and just really dug deep and got challenged and asked over and over again, like, who do I want to be on the internet? And I've always tried to be a lighthouse. Like, how can I shine as a light of encouragement, not to just shine and direct people towards Jesus, because ultimately that's my goal, but also how can I shine a light to say like, hey, if you're drinking a Diet Coke, and you're also taking these supplements and you're drinking your green juice and you're doing your smoothie and you're trying to go to the gym and you're trying to do all these health things, like, you don't have to feel guilty about that. Like, please still live your life, because you know what, that perfectionism that I was trying to achieve or thought that I needed to achieve because I had all these people telling me that I had to be that way, that makes you sick too. So don't do that. Okay? So still take your supplements, still drink your green drink, but don't worry about running through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru when you need to. So anyway, that was a big part. I actually just finished the course yesterday. And so it was a huge challenge. It was a huge honor. And so I'm on all the social medias as I'm Kristen Bruinius. The podcast is the Overcomers Podcast, I think, is the handle on all of the things. So they are two separate things. I did also make the decision to start a new account without my children present very often. When you start getting comments that tell you to go kirk yourself, which apparently that's a new phrase, that's when I was like, oh, well, it was before then, but that was a confirmation that I made the right decision not to include my children. So anyway, that's a little bit of an update of what's been going on in my life. I'm happy to be back. We've got some amazing, amazing people coming. I hope that you see my heart in this is just to show what God is doing in people's lives and to showcase other people. And we've got some awesome ones. And we actually have some themes going. For whatever reason, we have Crystal, and then Trevor. And then we have John, Nicole, Joe, Alicia, and various others. But Crystal's coming on next. Her son died of a drug overdose. The other Crystal is actually my sister-in-law, so do that math. She's going to be coming on. Trevor DeVries, who's running for state senate, I believe, is going to be coming on in a few weeks. He has an incredible story of how the Lord nudged him into politics. We have another Trevor who's coming on really with like a real lifelong struggle with addiction, drugs, alcohol, gambling, all the things. John O'Leary is coming on. I had the privilege to see him at a local event recently. I think he was 12. Why do I think he was younger than that? Anyway, I don't remember how old he was. Right now I'm having a brain fart. For some reason my brain wants to say 8. But anyway, he was young. He was in a house fire. Basically 100% of his body was burnt, we'll say. And he is a motivational speaker. He's written a book. They actually made a movie about him. He's going to be coming on. Nicole is actually the guest who was supposed to be on today, who's sick. She has a ministry called Fullness of Life Ministries, I believe what it is. I just finished reading her book. She talks a lot about demon oppression and the spiritual war that we are in. I mentioned Speak English with Joe. So Joe, who lives in Barcelona, is going to come on. My dear friend Alicia is going to come on. She had kidney cancer and can I use the word healed? Remission. We'll use the word remission so that we stay legal. So Alicia's in remission from kidney cancer. And so it's going to be a great season. I think I forgot to say this when I was talking about it being fun. To avoid burnout, what I plan to do is I plan to record 8 episodes and slowly drip them out once a week on Wednesdays and then give myself a little bit of a break and then repeat. So kind of like when I was a school teacher, we would do 8-week quarters. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't know exactly how I'm going to handle the summer yet. I may just take maybe the month of July off. I'm not really sure. If you guys have any feedback on how you think that would be best handled, I'd love to hear it. But that's all I got for you. I feel weird just having sat here and talked to you about GLP-1s and hormones and business stuff and whatever, but that's what's been going on in my life. And I mean, I guess if you made it this far, you found it interesting. You didn't turn it off. So I don't know what to say. You're welcome. I'm not, can you feel my discomfort doing solo episodes? Yeah. All right. I'm just going to end it here. Thank you guys for listening. If you got anything out of this, I would love to hear. Please send me a direct message, a text message, a phone call. You can write me a letter. I'll give you my address. If there's anything in here that you think a friend would benefit from, please share with them. But other than that, I'll see you next week.